The Dominion's war chamber pulsed with cold blue light as tactical holomaps rotated lazily above the floor. Alien admirals stood in loose formation, their scaled jaws slack with boredom, their talons drumming against ivory consoles. Humanity's colonies, tiny red scattered at the edges of Dominion space, blinked faintly, like sparks about to go out. "Pathetic," muttered Admiral Varric, his ridged crest lifting in disdain. "They spread themselves thin across the stars, then beg for treaties. Do they think paper shields can stop fleets?" The chamber broke into cruel laughter. To them, Earth's diplomats were little more than amusing curiosities, soft-fleshed beings who spoke in grand declarations of peace while barely holding onto their scattered settlements. Peace treaties, trade agreements, joint exploration pacts, all of it a stalling tactic in the Dominion's eyes. And now, at last, the humans had signed a sweeping treaty of non-aggression, one the Dominion never intended to honor. Varric flicked a talon across the map, zooming in on the Sol system. They believed their peace bought them time. Instead, it bought us location and complacency. We'll strike their colonies, then Earth itself. And when they come crawling to beg for the treaty's protection, we'll laugh. Admiral Karith stood silent among them, his expression unreadable. Unlike the others, he did not laugh. He remembered the skirmish over Titan's mining belt months earlier, when a supposedly unarmed human frigate had refused to die. It bled fire, yes, but every shot had been precise, deliberate. It had limped away, leaving 3 Dominion cruisers as wreckage. Karith had told himself it was luck. Yet the image of its captain's calm eyes on the tactical feed haunted him. Still, he said nothing. His empire thrived on arrogance. To question it now would mark him weak. The Dominion fleets moved quickly. Within days, one of Earth's outer colonies fell with hardly a fight. Civilians surrendered without firing a shot. Their transmissions begged for mercy, their voices trembling. Dominion soldiers broadcast the footage across the galaxy, humans with raised hands, kneeling before reptilian overlords. The message was clear. Earth's so-called peace was cowardice in disguise. "Do you see?" Varric sneered, playing the footage for the council. "They would rather kneel than fight. The treaty has rotted them from the inside." Laughter again, but Karith felt only unease. Something about the surrender had been too quick, too rehearsed. The occupation fleet settled into orbit above the captured colony, preparing its next jump. That was when a lone human warship emerged from the void. Old, scarred, its plating scorched by decades of service, it looked more like a relic than a threat. The Dominion ships formed a semicircle, weapons trained, their commanders chuckling at the audacity. "Identify yourself," barked a Dominion captain. "You face the fleet of the Threx Dominion. Lower your shields and surrender." The human vessel did not answer. Instead, it advanced slowly, methodically, as if testing their patience. Varric gave the order, without hesitation. Beams of plasma and swarms of missiles lit the void. The warship staggered under the onslaught, hull plating shattering away, yet it did not retreat. Instead, its return fire was precise, crippling a frigate's engines, detonating a cruiser's munitions hold. Even as it bled fire, it fought with uncanny calculation, every strike purposeful. The Dominion commanders roared with outrage. "Crush it! End this insult!" Finally, battered beyond recognition, the human ship began to withdraw. Dominion vessels pursued, savoring the kill, but the warship slipped into a narrow asteroid belt, vanishing from their scanners. Varric laughed, though his voice was tight. A desperate gesture. Nothing more. Tomorrow, we march on Earth itself, and this farce ends. Karith said nothing. He had noticed something the others had missed. The warship had not fired randomly. Its shots had been aimed with surgical care, as if each hit was part of a larger plan. And then there was the transmission. Even now, encrypted signals pulsed faintly through subspace. That vessel had been broadcasting from the moment it arrived, sending every detail of the Dominion fleet's tactics back to Earth. Far away, beneath kilometers of concrete and steel, a human command bunker sat in near silence. Rows of officers watched the alien broadcasts, their faces lit by cold light. Grainy images of surrender, of Dominion soldiers gloating, of the lone human warship bleeding in the void. General Marcus Hale stood at the center, hands clasped behind his back. His expression was calm, almost too calm, as the final image flickered, the Dominion fleet celebrating, declaring their next target. Earth. He exhaled slowly. Then he spoke, his voice quiet enough to make every officer lean closer. They really did it, he said. They broke the treaty. No one answered. The weight of the words pressed against them all. Hale's gaze hardened. He turned to his staff, his voice low but edged with steel. Bring everything online. All of it. The room came alive at once, alarms flashing, screens flooding with hidden command codes, long-dormant systems awakening. Somewhere deep below, engines that had slept for decades began to hum, as if the planet itself had been waiting. The feed from the Dominion fleet cut out, leaving only static. And in that silence, humanity's mask of peace began to slip. This section is 1,000 words, focusing on character establishment, Karith, Varric, General Hale, the central conflict, Dominion arrogance versus hidden human readiness, and ending with a chilling pivot that promises escalation. Would you like me to continue into section 2 immediately in the same narrative flow, or pause after each section so you can review and adjust tone/characters before moving forward? The Dominion fleet entered the Sol system with confidence bordering on delirium. War banners pulsed on their hulls, a display of arrogance rather than necessity. Admirals expected an easy conquest. Earth, a blue-green jewel, would be little more than another notch on their empire's record of subjugations. The void stretched silent around them, no interceptors, no fleet formations, only abandoned orbital stations drifting like derelict bones. Is this their defense? Sneered Varric, his voice transmitted across the command net. Empty scrap? Did the humans mistake us for scavengers? His captains chuckled in agreement. Even the junior officers laughed nervously, eager to echo the superiority of their leaders. Yet Karith remained still, eyes narrowing as the tactical readouts scrolled before him. The station's decay seemed too precise, too deliberate, as if they had been left to appear harmless. A hunter leaving bait in plain sight. They fled, one captain concluded smugly. They know they cannot resist. But the silence was wrong. Karith had seen true abandonment before, the chaos, the scatter of signals, the residue of panic. This was different. Orderly. Intentional. Before he could voice his doubt, the void erupted. The first flash came from the shadow of Earth itself, a colossal structure unfurled, its surface shedding cloaking panels like the skin of a serpent. What had appeared to be an abandoned shipyard lit up with thousands of signatures. Defense platforms awakened, spitting torrents of guided fire. Swarms of drones streaked outward in disciplined waves, their formation sharp and unnatural, as though choreographed. Another station flared to life on the far side of the planet, then another. What the Dominion had dismissed as orbital junk revealed itself as the largest hidden armament Karith had ever seen. Earth had not been unprepared. It had been waiting. The Dominion's laughter cut off in a heartbeat. Shouts filled the channels. Shields up. Return fire. Varric snarled in disbelief, his crest bristling. Tricks. Illusions. Burn them down. But the drones were not illusions. They struck with pinpoint accuracy, severing weapon arrays, crippling engines, dismantling capital ships piece by piece. The Dominion's first wave was gutted before it could regroup. Caritha's command ship shuddered under impact as a drone volley pierced its flank. His officers panicked, their discipline veneer cracking. He steadied his claws on the command rail, forcing his voice to remain even. Form tight phalanx. Overlapping shields. Do not chase them. But calm orders could not undo chaos. The humans had choreographed this with brutal precision. Dominion carriers found themselves targeted simultaneously, every strike tearing away their capacity to launch countermeasures. Plasma lances sliced through space, not randomly but with surgical dissection, crippling without waste. The comnet carried fragments of human voices, intercepted through tactical bleed. The words were chilling not for their volume, but for their restraint. Target locked. Fire. Confirmed hit. Moving to next. No shouting. No triumph. Only quiet efficiency. Karith realized the horror. This was not desperation, not luck. This was strategy, planned, patient, merciless. The humans had never trusted the treaty. They had prepared beneath a mask of peace, weaving weapons into silence. Panic rippled through Dominion ranks. They fight like machines, a captain wailed. No, Karith whispered unheard. Machines fight without feeling. These are worse. These are men who chose peace, and still built this. Hours bled by in seconds. Ships that had once symbolized Dominion dominance now scattered like frightened prey. The humans never pursued recklessly. They pressed where it hurt most, cutting supply lines, severing communications, trapping pockets of ships in dead zones where no retreat existed. Karith pulled his vessel back, barely surviving a drone strike that burned across the command deck. Smoke filled the chamber, officers coughing as sparks cascaded from shattered consoles. Through the haze, Karith's eyes fixed on a captured human data packet that had slipped into their system during the battle. At first, he dismissed it as corrupted code. Then the images unfolded. Grainy footage. Black and white reels of humans fighting humans, trenches, firestorms, mushroom clouds blooming over cities. The recordings were ancient, their quality poor, yet the violence was unmistakable. The Dominion had studied human diplomacy, their commerce, their fragile attempts at interstellar outreach. They had never studied this. A soldier crawling through mud, face caked in blood, still pressing forward with a rifle. Cities reduced to ash. Fleets in flames. The humans had endured annihilation by their own hand, and still rebuilt. His chest tightened as he watched. The thought coiled in his mind like a serpent. They were never pacifists. They were survivors. They wore peace the way predators wear shadows. Karith shut the feed, trembling despite himself. Around him, his officers scrambled to restore control, but he knew the truth. Control was already lost. Dominion reinforcements attempted to jump into Sol, only to find themselves scattered by wormhole interference. Human fleets emerged from those same rifts, appearing where no ship should exist, striking with impossible speed. Autonomous squadrons, silent and relentless, severed the reinforcements before they could stabilize. In the war chamber, Varric screamed defiance. Fight harder. Overwhelm them. His voice cracked, the bravado fraying as his command ship took hit after hit. His boast sounded hollow now, shrill against the calm, human transmissions that bled through their channels. Karith turned from the failing battle screens to the shadowed reflection in his viewport. He no longer saw an empire poised for conquest. He saw a people who had woken something they could not contain. Hours later, bruised and humiliated, fragments of the Dominion fleet limped away from Earth's orbit. Thousands of drones trailed them only to vanish back into hidden stations, as if dismissing the survivors as irrelevant. The Dominion had come expecting surrender. Instead, they had been dissected without mercy. Karith sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the human war archives once more. The images gnawed at him. No alien empire had survived its own appetite for destruction for long. Empires collapsed under the weight of endless conquest. Yet humanity had endured slaughter after slaughter, war after war, clawing back from every abyss. They did not break. They learned. A voice recording played faintly through his speakers, captured during the battle. We did not seek this war, but you brought it to our door. You mistook patience for weakness. Now you will learn the difference. Karith lowered his gaze, his claws curling against the desk. The Dominion had believed the humans naive. But now, for the first time, he felt something alien grip his chest. Not contempt, not superiority. Fear. And beneath that fear, a realization that chilled him further. The Dominion Council chamber had never felt so divided. Once, the great vaulted hall had been a theater of unity, where decisions were delivered with arrogance and stamped with inevitability. Now, voices rose in discordant waves, Admirals and governors barking accusations across the room, their crests flaring, their talons rattling against stone. The faint stench of fear clung to the air, though no one would name it. Varric stormed to the center, his posture stiff with fury. What happened at Sol was sabotage.
Trickery.
The humans exploited cowardice in our fleets, nothing more. Their victory was temporary. With full mobilization, we will crush them as we should have from the beginning. Others echoed him, desperate for bravado, their words tumbling over each other. Mobilize. Sweep their colonies clean. No mercy. Their aggression was not confidence, but camouflage, an attempt to hide their trembling spines. Karith listened, saying nothing. His eyes drifted across the massive hollow display that still flickered above them, replaying fragments of the failed assault. Dominion ships dying in silence, human drones carving them apart with surgical calm. Even in memory, the images unsettled him. He recalled the intercepted footage of ancient human wars, the relentless march through fire and ash, the stubborn refusal to die. Varric's rants sounded thinner with every passing second, a desperate chant against a truth none wished to face. Finally, one counselor's voice broke through. They dismantled our fleet in hours. They severed our supply chains before we even noticed. What empire has done that to us before? His words hung in the chamber, sharp and accusing. Varric bared his fangs. You would have us cower before primitives? Their technology is crude compared to ours. Their fleets are but scraps held together with fear. We will overwhelm them with numbers. Numbers mean nothing if they know where to strike, Karith said at last, his tone measured, deliberate. The chamber turned to him. He rose slowly, every motion weighed down by the knowledge of what he risked. You saw it as clearly as I did. The humans did not fight as prey. They fought as predators.
Calm.
Patient. Every strike planned. Every blow calculated. They chose peace when they could have chosen war, and still they built this. Murmurs rippled. Some nodded, others scoffed, but no one interrupted. They were ready for us, Karith continued. Every station, every drone, every maneuver was part of a plan. The treaty was not their weakness. It was their net, and we walked into it willingly. You disgrace your rank, Varric spat. You praise the enemy while our empire reels. I should have expected such cowardice from one who hesitated during the battle. Caritha's crest twitched, but his voice remained steady. If caution is cowardice, then call me coward. But I tell you this, ignore the humans at your peril. They are not what we thought. The chamber erupted again, factions forming like storm fronts. One side demanded escalation, overwhelming fleets, planetary bombardments, a full commitment of Dominion's strength. The other whispered uneasily, asking questions no one dared before. What if the humans were more than they appeared? What if their patience meant foresight? What if their peace was never weakness at all? Hours of debate ground into nothing. No resolution, no unity. Only a dangerous fracture. The Empire had never tolerated doubt, yet now doubt bloomed like rot in every corner. Later, in the solitude of his quarters, Karith stared at the stars beyond the viewport. His officers lingered, silent, waiting for orders. He dismissed them with a wave and remained alone, the galaxy's vast expanse pressing in on him. He thought of the human general's voice carried through intercepted transmissions. Bring everything online. All of it. The words were calm, not boastful, not cruel, just inevitable. He wondered how many centuries humanity had hidden that inevitability. How long had they smiled across treaty tables, offering olive branches with one hand while their other prepared the blade. The more he considered it, the more he realized they had not been deceived at all. They had been warned. The treaty had been humanity's test, and the Dominion had failed. His comm link pulsed suddenly, dragging him from his thoughts. Reports streamed in from the border worlds. Outposts gone dark, fleets ambushed at their own supply lines, colonies raided with precision. The humans were no longer waiting. They had begun to strike back. Caritha's stomach nodded. This was no conventional retaliation. The Dominion had expected rebellion, ragged resistance, guerrilla skirmishes. Instead, the humans attacked with terrifying discipline. They struck infrastructure, not symbols. They severed arteries, not limbs. And they disappeared before counterattacks could land, vanishing into wormholes that opened like sudden mouths across the void. The Empire's communications collapsed into chaos. Governors screamed for reinforcements that never came. Admirals begged for clarity, their fleets already scattered. Civilian riots bloomed on Dominion worlds, panic spreading faster than military orders could contain it. Karith sank into his chair, talons tapping against the armrest. This was the war the humans had prepared for, not conquest, but dismantling. Not loud, not triumphant. Efficient, ruthless. In his mind, he saw again the faces from those ancient archives, men dragging themselves from the rubble, women rebuilding amid ashes, children hiding in shelters while bombs fell above. Those humans had lived through annihilation and still rebuilt. The Dominion had mistaken endurance for softness. They had mistaken quiet for weakness. Another report streamed in. 3 Dominion fleets cut off, their wormhole gates collapsed. No survivors. Karith whispered into the empty room, words no one would hear but himself. This is not war for them. This is history repeating. Across the Empire, panic turned to silence. World after world lost contact. Outposts went dark. Fleets folded into nothing. The Dominion had thought themselves unassailable, but the cracks spread faster than even Karith feared. He wondered if the Council still debated, still shouted bravado into the echoing chamber, or if they, too, now understood the truth. He thought of Earth, of its blue surface untouched, its defenses hidden until the last moment. He wondered how many more secrets they kept beneath their calm. He wondered if humanity had already decided the fate of the galaxy, and if all that remained was for the Dominion to realize it too late. Karith closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. He no longer asked if they could win. He only asked how much of the Empire would remain when the humans were finished. The Dominion's collapse came not with one great battle but with 100 small defeats, each sharper and more humiliating than the last. Fleets that had once blackened the stars drifted as burning debris, cut apart before they could form into formation. Shipyards that had produced war machines for centuries fell silent in days, their reactors gutted, their workers fleeing into panic. Entire sectors vanished from the network of command, their governors either defecting or begging the humans for protection. The Empire had not been conquered, it had unraveled, strand by strand, until nothing remained but scattered fragments too terrified to call themselves whole. Admiral Karith moved through the wreckage of his command as if sleepwalking. His vessel limped from system to system, picking up the transmissions of a dying empire. Screams for help. Silence. Then the faint, steady voice of the humans, broadcast across every Dominion frequency. It was never angry, never triumphant. Only calm. Stand down. Cease fire. Lay down arms, and you will be spared. The words chilled Karith more than threats ever could. The humans spoke as though the war had already ended, as though mercy was not kindness, but procedure. He stood at the viewport, watching the glow of yet another Dominion capital world burning beneath him. Once, the sight would have filled him with determination to fight harder, to avenge the loss. Now, it only left him hollow. His empire had built its pride on dominance, yet here it was, broken not by a greater brutality, but by a colder efficiency. The humans had never shouted, never gloated. They had simply dismantled the Dominion as one might dismantle a weapon, piece by piece until it was safe to discard. Summoned under flag of truce, Karith descended to a neutral station on the fringe of Dominion territory. The human delegation awaited him in a chamber stripped of grandeur. No banners, no symbols of conquest, only simple steel walls, a table, and the presence of men and women who carried themselves not as victors, but as judges. At their head stood General Marcus Hale, the same man whose voice Karith had heard declaring the end of the treaty. His posture was composed, his gaze steady, and in his eyes there was no malice. Only certainty. You expected us to kill you, Hale said quietly when the chamber had settled. That is not what we are here for. Karith held his silence, though his talons tapped faintly against the table. He had steeled himself for rage, for humiliation, for demands of surrender. But the human's calm unnerved him more than fire ever could. We don't want your extinction, Hale continued. We don't need your empire reduced to ashes. What we require is stability. You will govern, but under our order. Your fleets will disarm. Your governors will answer to ours. And you, Admiral, will serve as liaison between what remains of your dominion and the authority of Earth. Caritha's throat tightened. You mean to spare us? Spare is not the word, Hale replied, his tone edged with something colder. You attacked us under a banner of peace. You broke what you never intended to honor. We could erase you. Instead, we will civilize you. The galaxy cannot afford another predator without restraint. The words cut deeper than execution ever could. Karith lowered his gaze, the weight of failure and survival pressing into him like iron. To live, not as conqueror, but as subject. To see his people survive only by bending to the order of those they had scorned. It was a sentence worse than death, because it promised remembrance. The Dominion would endure, but never again on its own terms. Outside, the station's vast windows revealed the shifting silhouettes of human fleets. They did not parade their victory. They moved with silence, efficient as ever, ships gliding into position as though preparing for wars yet to come. Karith watched them with something he could finally name: awe. He had seen empires fight for glory, for vengeance, for conquest. The humans fought for none of these. They fought because survival had shaped them to. And now that survival had given them dominion over the stars. When he left the chamber, escorted not by guards but by silence, Karith felt the galaxy's weight pressing in from every direction. His empire had fallen. Humanity's had begun. Yet the humans did not celebrate, did not proclaim dominion with the arrogance the Threx would have displayed. They only prepared, as though this victory were merely another step toward something larger. In the solitude of his transport, Karith allowed himself a final reflection. He thought of the treaty, of the Dominion's laughter, of the first colony that surrendered so easily. Every step had been a thread woven into a web, and the Dominion had charged blindly into it. Humanity had not deceived them. They had only waited, patient and unyielding, until arrogance brought the prey into reach. The stars drifted by, cold and endless, and Karith whispered to himself words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Peace was never their weakness. It was their mask. The humans had pulled it away, and now the galaxy would see what lay beneath.